Alright, folks, welcome back. It is day 8. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は8日目です。Alright, so we finally basically passed our honeymoon period, the 1 week experience. Let's get into our review in prep for our next big thing that we're starting a little bit later. As a refresher, I was a little early on the mountain yesterday, so we're going to get mountain. What was the mountain? Oh, we didn't get anything yet. Yeah, right. So it looks like so there's the 18, right? We'll be exchanging this for this. So 18, and it looks like it's doubling up. I see. Wait. 42. So 40. What was this? 15, 30, 30, 42. Okay, and then probably 43. I see. So intriguing. All right. Let's get right into it. Time like the present. All right. So what do we have here? 8 fins, right? Joanne. We're being a little bit more behaved today. Oh, Joanne is a woman, right? Gotta find those 2 knees. Santa-san. Oh, wait. Nintendo. Cheat it. The hatch. Commandments. You. What was the... Oh, 7%. Wait, what was the 2 for? Tie-dye? Ichi? River? Kawa? Bull? Joel? Toe? Right? Toe's mouth? The toe... Joe's toe above ground? Fountain? Paw below ground? With a toe? One getting hit. Below ground. Power Rangers. Cookie. Enter. Construction or industry. Riki. Ko. Construction. Oh, we were 9. We like cookies. New. Congrats, your newest addition. Okay, you've unlocked a vocabulary word. Oh, I wasn't expecting this. Oh. Hooray! Our first vocabulary word. You've unlocked a vocabulary word. Welcome it to the family by completing your lessons. But first, can I tell you a thing or two about vocabulary? Yeah. Yeah, go right ahead. The 411 on vocabulary. You know, to this day, I'm not entirely sure what the 411 means. Hold up. What does 411 mean? Oh, it's a directory information. Konnichiwa, Gecko-san. You are just in time for me to unlock my first vocabulary lesson. Okay, hold up. So the 411 is a telephone number for directory information. Dang. Informal, the 411, information or knowledge usually about an event or an activity. Wow. I guess I either wasn't... I might have grown up where 411 was still being used, but boy. I think the closest thing I can relate to the 411 is star 69. No, it's not star 69, obviously. But it's star something. What was it? Star something to retrieve phone number. What was it called? I don't remember. It was star something where you like dial it to get the phone number of the person that called before. What up? What was the code? Oh, it was star 69. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I wrote it off because of like the changing meaning, like the changing usage of 69. Star 69. Nice. I was like, it rolled off my tongue. I'm like, that can't be right. Can it? How the times have changed. Yeah, in the United States, for anyone who's gonna watch this later and outside of the United States, star 69 was the command that you place in a mobile or landline, and if someone calls you, right, star 69, you can try to retrieve the phone number of the person that called you prior to the smartphone era. So when I think about 411, that's even further back, and it's like a big directory and whatnot. But star 69 was the feature until like caller ID, right, was a thing, and then caller ID turned into smartphone tech then. Interesting. That was a little fun trip down memory lane. Thank you, Ko. All right, so vocabulary words are similar to kanji in that they have an English meaning and a Japanese reading. Unlike kanji, though, vocabulary typically only has one way of reading it. This means you'll have to type in exactly the correct reading in order to move up in SRS. That's kind of funny how that is phrased, that SRS is a unit, right? The way the English is written, it's referring to SRS as a unit, a measurable unit. Stay accurate, stay vigilant. Look at those determined faces. I think she needs some even more like aggressive face. Regardless of the country, I'm just young enough to not have lived through the kind of stuff I think, or not really remember anyway. I think it's one of those things like yeah, nah, you don't really need to. Like the convenience, like this is one of those examples where it is truly obsolete. And the way calls are being done now, it's not necessarily like an evolution of that thing, of that system. That system basically just got dumped, right? Like for another. So it's an interesting share for sure. I didn't realize you were that young. Gekko. What else can you tell me about vocab? All right. I didn't use 411. I didn't even understand what the 411 meant. Like what I mean is I didn't understand the literal 411. I understand when someone tells me I'll give you the 411 on vocabulary. How did that mature? Now it's TLDR, right? I'll give you the TLDR, or I'll give you the Skippy. Skippy was before TLDR. Like I used to, or the down low, or the down. I don't download, not download. Or it's kind of like a mix. There's like various versions of, oh, here's the under the table deal, and then here's the above board things. There were quite a lot of ways, but now I guess the TLDR, right? I think TLDR is slightly old now, but it is also not old enough for both like the generations to use. So giving someone the TLDR is probably the more modern way of saying 411. You don't think we're that different in age? You're 34? Yeah, you're not that young. You're like fringe, you're nearly Gen Z, nearly, but you can join the millennial transition club, right? I'm 37. So we're not that. The Star 69 was when you were in your teens, around, so I was around 16, 17 years old ish. Yeah, we were both in our teens when the Star 69 thing was a thing. And the coming of color ID. Okay, maybe early teens. Like both of us were in our early teens. You might have been slightly below 10 years old yet. Nah, it's fine. I was old enough to actually physically made a call on a rotary phone. Crazy. You know, here's another thing. That the two of us might share. I was old enough to make a payphone call in the city. Think about that, just that idea right now. Like that I did too at your grandma's house. Oh, that's kind of sweet. Yeah, man, this is memories. You gotta cherish them. You gotta link them up. And now, thanks to WaniKani, I got a chance to share another thought about celebrating our age. What else can you tell me about vocab? Let's go. More on vocabulary. Vocabulary reinforces the kanji meanings. It most certainly does. In the other direction, that's definitely a great way to look at it. Look forward and backwards, because it's a two-way street, right? I think this type of thinking is much less utilized. Like a lot of times when you're thinking about progress and learning and stuff, it's often looked as unidirectional. So like if you look in the reverse, sometimes you can start somewhere else, right? The reason why I say this is I think a little bit back there was like a person who is incredibly analytical, and they're convinced that a certain thing serves a specific function, and that's the only function it can serve primarily, and that's how they learn. So whenever you think of it that way in series, when it comes to the learning process or deductive reasoning or constructing, one will become under practice going one direction and then not the other direction. And then when you break the series, it's difficult to problem solve and then find context, right? Not, again, like the star 69 thing, not necessarily pragmatic most of the time. The idea is when you're doing it with your brain, oftentimes that little technique and that skill building and flexibility can apply to other types of learning, where like, okay, well, now the video game wants you to do this randomly, right? Like, for example, okay, first you have to learn the cards in a series, like 1 through 10, right? And then they want you to learn it from 10 to 1. And now the next level is to randomize it. So you can imagine 1 through 10 as separate processes. The idea is wherever you start, 10 could be next to 9, because if they're in order, you could check if 10 is to 9. But if it's 10 going to 8, you can fill in 9, right? That's kind of the idea of, at some point, you're gonna do the series for convenience. It, like, if the threshold is too high, you can do it in series. It gives you more context, like a mechanical context. And then ultimately, when it comes to construction, you know, the end game of construction, the idea is you're breaking them down into the most manageable amount of flexibility, and that's where you settle. And sometimes when it comes to language learning, it'd be the breaking down of units. So WaniKani, at least one of the foundational things, is to break down the components as much as possible while creating a foundation routine that can manage for most people consistently that high volume of small components. And at some point when you're stacking these up, you'll settle on a specific, I'm going to say, layer of complexity. And that's where your ideal compression is, right? My ideal compression is, we'll find out where it is for Japanese. However, I could do this for like deck building or something that I spend a lot more time. I do skip over some fundamentals because like, for example, if you're going to say water, right? I'm not going to say H2O. And dear me, I know there are some really, really high functioning people out there that want to say dihydrogen oxide. That's fair enough. But the idea is that you find your level of compression. And oftentimes it's also conditioned by people's standardized or generalized idea of compression, right? That's the difference of being verbose and terse, right? Or in other words, concise or elaborate. Your feeling is the level of its compression, which I like that they're emphasizing that, well, not only can you do that, you can also do it happens the other way. If you happen to learn, what I mean by this is, WaniKani, this message is very important because if you don't know the read or the components, you can also know the vocabulary and break it down into its components to reinforce, right? Wherever you start, there's information to be gathered. I would give more of a real world, like a more complex behavioral pattern. Like, for example, there's this idea that when you take a data point, right? When you take a data point versus a result, you look at the result, and a lot of individuals don't think backwards. As in, when you read a news article and this person gives you like the top 10 language learning apps, right? If it's past a specific point of deduction or critical thinking, rarely do individuals, when they get really normalized to that step, all the steps that lead to that precedes that step is under practice and or irrelevant, right? an influencer can tell you this is the best product in the world, and you might step back one and say, well, what are all the other products? That's fair enough, but that's probably as far as it go. Like, how did this person determine that this is the best product? And when by how, not simply by the generality, but how was the methodology done for all the generalized method titles, right? And so far, so forth. And what is the history of this product going back? We'll talk about, this is the core of my story and introduction and my bullet point for later today, which I will be talking about Hansa Hero, right? And how I'm gonna interpret that. You think it's also important for beginners to understand that kanji are not words, vocab items? Yes. Although some words are indeed composed of a single kanji, that's a misconception I had prior to starting. Yeah. The distinction, right? It's a this deals with the exclusion thinking, like distinct one-to-one exclusion thinking, which it's funny because a lot of learners use a primary language that generally does not operate on exclusion. And what I mean by that is one word, one meaning, one cluster, one thing, right? It's there isn't a language, at least a macro language. There isn't a macro language, because I don't know, there's like some rare language out there that has like a unique thing. In fact, that's one of the things that makes it unwieldy when someone thinks about learning a language, right? While this is a misconception, it might seem like it actually makes it a little bit more overwhelming, in my opinion. In general, when you think of something like every single thing is a single thing, that's kind of almost overwhelming. In fact, they are related, right? And I know you're saying that you were thinking it is actually one-to-one or something like that, or like there's some distinction, or you're trying to find distinction. Oftentimes, though, when one object gets compressed into multiple things, they're all of those things. So instead of seeking to separate them, sometimes things are layered on top of each other, right? So you could be open to that, or you want to neatly arrange them, like in your head. Like, for example, is it harder, quote unquote, is it harder for you intellectually to think of Yama as mountain, the radical? I'm using the WaniKani example, right? Mountain, which is the radical, and then mountain, the kanji, and then the separate mnemonics separately. Like, then you would think, okay, so that's 4 things, right? At least 4 things to remember. And what I have already begun doing, because I've already done some of this for a very long time in Duolingo and whatnot, is that now the world, you build the meaning of something to be not just one thing, right? So you could argue, instead of saying kanji are not words or vocab items, although some words are indeed composed of kanji, you could have one kanji say, well, it's also all of these things. So then they get clustered together in their own mnemonic, right? Kanji, this character can be both a word, a vocab item, a single kanji, and a radical, all at the same time, which that creates like a level of depth of reinforcement for the significance of the kanji. And Duo does not do that explicitly. Their kanji section, though, does imply it by exposing you to its relevance across 5 parameters. But usually the most pragmatic that's outside of Duolingo are the 3 parameters, which is the read, the structure, the visibility of it, and then the sound. So whenever you're in the kanji unit, all the choices have some relevance across this. Oh, actually, a 4th one would be meaning, right? meaning. So you have these 4 properties, and nowadays, this is me coming into WaniKani, obviously. For Duolingo, because of Duolingo's kanji section, I have already started compressing manually myself, like explicitly through writing, that they are compressed to all 4. Nowadays, I love to discover new words for which I can recognize the kanji and then try to guess the meaning or reading, and then I love the feeling when I actually happen to get it right. Yes, exactly. And here's the thing. I will. This isn't a sorry. I'm gonna make this sound like a competition. In addition to that, if you're recognizing components and building structures, kind of like Lego blocks and whatnot, when you don't get it right, it also be like, aha. Now I get to add more information. So what is it? Oh, and then you hear the, oh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? Like, even if you don't get it right, at some point you're like, dang, now I got something new I can add to my library of deduction. At least in my opinion. The reason why I mentioned this backwards and forwards is this person probably speaks very great Japanese and fluent Japanese. The thing is, the discovery process for this person might not be as interesting to me as me and you. Like when someone says, "Oh yeah, this kanji, it only serves, its primary function of a kanji is to give you meaning." That's it. That's what that person said, basically. And it's like, so the only thing you should be learning is by meaning. And my first thought was, well, that is certainly what I didn't do. And it's like, well, you'd be wasting your time. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I never heard from that person again. I demonstrated how I do my discovery process and how interacting with Japanese, not thinking of it that way, made my experience so rich. And like, it almost feels almost multi-dimensional to the point where it imitates my early days with English, right? So it's one of those impasse, generally speaking, and it does come up. We'll see if it comes up in discussion when we run into other people. They both lead, I mean, in both ways. However you spend your time, being able to acquire new knowledge and learn from those methods or any of the methods, right, combined, you'll hopefully reach your satisfactory level of understanding, right? For me, I resonate with you where it's fun to put things together. You have like limited information, but you have just enough information where you can squeeze in like whether you're like, oh, I feel like this is how it is, and then not so much. And then when I'm totally off the like mark, I'm like, yo, this is pretty cool too, right? That kind of thing. I get to miss WoW WoW HC drama for Japanese. Wait, you're playing WoW? Oh, you were watching WoW like hardcore content, Blair? Oh yeah, when I get it wrong, I love to try to understand how that come to be. I felt it sometimes gets similar to semantics with Latin roots where you feel it sometimes gets similar to semantics with Latin roots where you can try to guess based on word parts. Yes. It's like a puzzle game. I'm not sure if you ever liked like the new modernized indie puzzle games, but oftentimes like trying to figure the act of trying to figure something out and then elicitingly giving you clues to trying to understand it is an absolute rewarding active process. And it does take time to normalize that reward, because others, like the hustle and bustle of the internet, would prefer to be immediately told and corrected as to what the answer is, largely because instant gratification is their main source of reward, if you know what I mean. Like, we're not saying that one is better than the other, one is more efficient than the other. The idea is, what is the normalized reward system that you have? And slowly you can entertain other reward system, but it is very difficult to compete nowadays with the normalization of instant gratification by instant peace of mind, right? Because of the high level of instant gratification, any lag time between knowing the right answer and the wrong answer, like how to correct a mistake, becomes a potential conflict of interest with your emotions. Nowadays, I can tell you, it is very difficult, in my opinion, for a lot of people, the vast majority of people that I've met, that if I make an error and it takes me a whole day to review all my notes because I separate my practice and reviews when I'm not in like really focus on learning. Like for example, how WaniKani does it is you do all your lessons, you do all your reviews, and then they collect your mistakes, right? Then you choose to focus on mistake things. Those type of things can be in different order. However, I would say the average person would make a mistake, then correct it as it goes, right? So that reinforces a specific type of behavior where if you're consuming media, you get hung up on a single stopping point. And that's a series line of thinking where when a process ends, there's no failsafe check marker to pass the check and continue with the process before looping back. It's one of those behaviorisms that are so consistent when it comes to those who are most frustrated with transitioning to using like different approaches of immersion and whatnot. The idea that the sentiment, younger, typically younger individuals would say, how do you get over, like, I always get stuck and then I would have to rewind and play the whole thing again and I never get to finish whatever I was watching. And that's kind of a lot to do with, in my opinion, heavily influenced with how you practice and normalize specific types of reward linked with your behavior of how to learn something, in my opinion. So if you gotta drop everything to correct the thing that you're stuck on, which I sometimes do, I choose when I do it. Like for example, I would say, nah, I'll get this later. I'll just write this down now. And then sometimes I'm like, no, I gotta look this up now. So I kind of mix between the two. Like, is this like really urgent? Like, for example, I stopped for the 411 in this digression. I could choose to like, I'll talk about it later kind of thing, right? And even then, that's not a mistake. That's more of a distraction. So oftentimes, there's a lot of times where if you don't know the right thing at the moment, that actually ends up becoming a distraction that becomes deconstructive for everything else. And at some point, relying on that type of line of thinking will become inevitably not sustainable, in my opinion. Right? Because a level of error is to be expected if one understands the human nature. And if you constantly normalize not making errors, life is kind of going to be kind of tough. Like, in the terms of the reward system, right? It's a good point though. I mean, I like your points, Gecko. Yeah, watching only Fangs streamers hate rating creators because someone got banned is a bad thing to do. Goblins don't wow, Claire. You sound like a gossip girl. I haven't watched WoW drama in a while. All right, so let's get back. Let's reinforce. Vocabulary reinforces the kanji meaning and readings you learn, which also teaching you new ones. Not to mention you're learning new Japanese words. These will definitely help you with all the Japanese comic books. Wait. Oh my gosh, it's a hyphenated sentence. Wait. These will definitely help with all those comic books well-meaning relatives kept buying you. Oh my gosh, well-meaning as an adjective for relatives. Now I'm curious where Ko is from. Well-meaning relatives. That's a very uncommon compound adjective. Huh. And then I like how they quoted Japanese comic books, because at this stage in WaniKani, you wouldn't know what a manga is, right? Yeah, they were well-meaning, good intentions and all that. Yeah. The well-meaning is a very it's a very regional specific thing. So interesting. Huh. Well-meaning or kind-hearted. Kind-hearted is the other adjective, the compound adjective. Kind-hearted as opposed to well-meaning. Interesting. I personally, for me, I strayed away from well-meaning because well and meaning are very different from kind and hearted, as in the way you would read this can cause like reading intentions to be different, right? A little English thing. It's English. It's an English thing. What else? More on vocabulary. For some of the vocabulary, you already learned the meaning, the readings, so those should be a piece of cake. A piece of cakey. No, I should really start like throwing in some Japanese words just for some katakana ego just for practice. For others, you've learned the new readings through mnemonics. Just English things, I know. For others, you'll learn the new readings through mnemonics. There are a lot of vocabulary terms, but with your knowledge of the associated kanji, all the vocabulary you learn uses kanji you've proven you know. Oh, that I really like that. That reinforcement, that positive reinforcement, right? I don't know how intentional, like calculated intent that Ko is writing. However, the words that the way they're describing, in my opinion, is either coincidence or very important when it comes to, in my opinion, learning intent, right? As opposed to saying lots of daunting things, all the ways that their Ko is writing, addressing a lot of the potential overwhelming things you need to know, is framed in an encouraging way. In my opinion, it might sound cliche. Overall, consistently, people like students and whatnot perform far more consistently, in my opinion, anecdotally, through positive reflection and inflection of things, which basically is in my okay, this is a generalization. It's not what the internet relies on. The internet relies on fear. Like, oh, don't forget all the billions of words, don't forget all the billions of kanji that you need to know soon, so you better get started. Like, and here's how you can get them to, here's how you can do it fast. Like, yeah, okay. Hello there, virus. What's good? We are in day 8 of WaniKani. Yep, and we are getting our first vocabulary words. Yeah, there are a lot of vocabulary terms, but with your knowledge, yeah, you'll be surprised how easy they are to learn, right? Focusing on the person as opposed to some nebulous hypothetical thing. Yes, Ko is not here. like that person isn't interacting with you directly. However, a little use of address. Have I watched Squid Games? I have watched Squid Game. Yes. Oh, we get 3 lessons. All right, let's see what our new vocabulary words are. And then we gotta switch gears today fairly quickly because we got a lot to write about the companion piece coming up. Okay, so we have 9. The vocabulary is composed of 1 kanji, 9, right? Does the combination of the kanji mean somewhat... Does the combination of the kanji meanings somewhat relate to the vocabulary meaning? Based on the kanji composition, can you guess the reading of the vocabulary? That wording is a English problem for me. Does the combination of the kanji meanings... Okay. At the current moment, there's only 1. Somewhat relate to the vocabulary meaning. Okay, yeah. So it's using the baseline. This is the kanji character, and then that is the vocabulary word. Yes. So they're stacked on top of each other. They didn't go the route where, oh, if you know the kanji or you know the radical, you know the vocabulary, which is what you picked up Korean because of it now. Ooh, well, good luck on Korean virus. Blair is also... This question does not make much sense for a single kanji word. Yeah. But it's like the other one where like, oh, this is 1 and it includes 1. However, he naturally written it in a way that's like, hey, for this example, it's the same, right? Like you would present the question and then just say like, you know, which it is inferred here, where like, oh yeah, it's the same, like that kind of thing. Oh, a word type. I like it. So they added a categorization already. A word type. This is what I typically do after Duolingo. One of the part of the aspects of construction, right? Constructing the construct. I know it sounds redundant, but making the construct, one of the fundamental early steps that you would do is categorization. So word type, right? And they do that already for vocabulary. I'm kind of curious if there's anything else. So numerical. Meaning explanation. When a vocab is made up of a single kanji with... Oh, they do explain. When a vocab is made up of a single kanji with no okurigana, hiragana attached to kanji, it often has the same meaning as the kanji it's based off of. Okay, same goes for the word "you" as well. It has the same meaning as its kanji counterpart. All right, yeah. So it's explained later. Interesting. So now we have Kyoko and Kenichi, and they're both Kanto accent.
Q.
Q.
Ku.
Ku.
Yep, as to be expected. Like it. Oh, this is gonna be a point of comparison with the next thing we're doing today, because I noticed some voice samples and I realized, yeah, definitely a smaller production, but they're starting up, right? So this is nice to have these things, but we'll go into the inevitable topic about comparing Duolingo and then a smaller project and then resources and how they go about doing these type of samples. This is often a very contentious or very hot topic, which I have a very neutral take on it. Reading explanation. When a vocab is made up of a single kanji with no... Okay, I feel like it usually uses the kunyomi reading. Oh yeah, you explained this to me actually, Gecko, the other day. With the exception of numbers. Numbers are the exceptions, as you might already know. When they're alone with no... Yeah, there it is. This is the thing you mentioned yesterday, or either 2 days ago or yesterday. Or it might be 3 days ago. Has it already been that long? When they're alone with no okurigana, they're the onyomi reading, which you should already know from learning the kanji that makes up this word. Yeah, you told me the fun fact already the other day. So pattern of use, Q plus counter. Yes. And they and this person Cole uses the same terminology I use. Way early on, like maybe the first, when Duolingo introduced the first few counter words. Just FYI, in the setting you can turn on auto read when you open the reading tab. It will automatically play the audio. Don't know if you like that though. I do not. Generally speaking, I make an attempt, much like everything else. I make an attempt before I hear it, and then I would correct from the attempt and the hearing. So then I normalize what I think it is to what it is, and then retroactively correct and line the two things up. However, Duolingo reads things beforehand, so that was a different thing to adjust to. So what I typically do is I do different techniques when it's reading. When Duolingo reads the first time, I do different tasks with it. So when Duolingo is reading, it always auto reads, by the way. Or you can turn off listening entirely, which that's a mixed bag in its own. So Duolingo auto reads all the time. So when it auto reads, I'm imagining the characters. And then when I'm going back and pronouncing it, I'm reading the text with my pronunciation in mind. And then I move on. If over time I notice that there's some visualization that mismatches with the auto reading in my mind, then I would go back and do that. And then when I'm solving the translation, I'm imagining the image of the meaning. So I'm doing interpretive and image creation. And that's the routine I have for each sentence. So what happens is I do a bit of visualizing, like the actual events. I don't have aphantasia, by the way, or like I don't have a high level of aphantasia. So when I interpret something, I also imagine what it looks like in my head. So a hypothetical image in my head pops up, and the English translation shows up as a descriptor for the past, because in Duolingo you have to translate, right? However, before then, when it auto plays, I'm trying to constantly focus on the idea. You'll probably see me like look away whenever, like look down. My face don't turn, but I like look down or look up or something. When something auto plays, I'm trying to imagine writing all the characters out, not one by one, but like the characters being scanned out, like maybe a subtitle or something, and then I would read it with my attempt, and that's how we go about it. Here, since it's the ideal version where I will look at it, I'll absorb what I know about it, then hear the correction, then I'll do it the other way, which is probably a fairly decent compliment to Duolingo. It's a little bit more involved, which, by the way, that whole idea of feature set, like what you can turn on and turn off and whatnot, that becomes relevant when we're comparing the next thing with WaniKani, because one is a young developer and one is a seasoned developer. So there's so much to be talked about these things. Great. Thanks for telling me that you can do that. I did see in the options earlier. We got to look at options earlier in the. Usually day 1 is the day where we explore the options. So context, usage pattern, I like it. And they use unit, by the way. What was my story? Oh yeah. Around 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that, counters were introduced. And it's funny, I think Hideyoshi was there before. Lots of people tell me like, oh, this is how counter works, counter needs this. And then I go into a spiel about, well, I understand how counters work. And then someone says like, no, it's not the same as in English. English doesn't have these things. And I'm like, well, okay, well, bear with me. There is an English counterpart, but the idea is English has, in colloquial speak, it's dispensed, as in like it's optional most of the time. But to make it even more interesting, I'm also Chinese. Like my parents are Chinese, so I'm used to using counter words. However, as a scientist, on top of that, since I used to work in science, you use units all the time. Otherwise, numbers have no meaning, right? A quantity of nothing is still insignificant without its unit, right? So, what do you mean? What happened to Seth? We're switching up our schedules a little bit. Duolingo will be a regular thing after I introduce things, but I won't have enough time today to do so because we're starting projects and projects require time. So Duolingo will still be around as much as it can be. Anyways, so for units, that's why I use the word units. It's a science thing, largely. And I made like a joke about not everyone says one whole pie, for example. Like you go up, sometimes they do, but not very often. Like you go up and say, can I have one whole loaf of bread? Or just one loaf? Or may I have one whole pie? One pie. So, lots of earlier days in Duolingo thing, so people are like, oh, that's not an English thing. Like English don't have this concept of counters. Like, well, colloquial English does not, because it has been contextualized for the most part. Things have been normalized in the sense that you no longer use those unit words. Like sometimes someone's like, oh, that just takes there are still colloquialisms that are kept, like, oh, that takes 10 what? Immediately it's a number that's conceivable, that's overlapped with many units, right? And that's when units are used to clarify. Like I could have said that took 10 minutes, then it suddenly becomes about time. It's like, no, that's 10 miles away. It suddenly becomes distance, because those are reasonable distances that overlap within a range. You don't say I drive one whole car, right? Because whoever drives half a car, that kind of thing. So units very, very still exist in English, but usually it's used for clarity as opposed to well, loaf is basically a counter for bread. No, it is. It's a unit of bread. In French, we would say un pain, one bread, no explicit counter. Yeah. So, which that's French, right? In English, what I'm suggesting is that the things that people think aren't counters or things that they don't see doesn't mean it doesn't exist in a language. This will be a contentious point between me and a lot of other people. Actually, the developers of Hansa Hero, which come up, made a bunch of videos in which they did generalizations about what English doesn't have compared to what is needed for like Chinese, for example. That's going to come up multiple times. It's more like things are disused, like it's not normally used in English, but they exist. Like, for example, oftentimes, just as a tease, this person made a video about how like English speakers may have problems with the representation, like the mnemonic or the phonetic representation system, like the pinyin system, for the sound, because English does not have the sound. And what that person is trying to do is they're doing the kanji is a vocab, kanji or radical is a kanji is a character, a radical is a radical, and a vocabulary is the segregation, where like if you focus like, yes, it doesn't fit that sound, that phonetics doesn't fit, as in that the phonetics of that sound does not fit in any English phonetics, but English speakers have made that sound before. It happens to not translate into a single sound. Like what was a good one that they did? Xiang, right? Xiang, or like ang, it's like ang, young, that kind of thing. Young. If you say young with an accent, in places in the United States, it comes out young. Like, that is one young boy. So, no, that's inaccurate in my opinion, but it's a very fringe case, right? Where if you do not encounter these things, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't exist, but I gave it a leeway because they're using generalization. So they're talking about, typically you wouldn't hear the twangy yang as opposed to young, right? I'm in a region where I don't have twangy like kind of pronunciation. However, it does exist in English. Like English, because there are other speakers from other regions and other backgrounds, those sounds do exist in English. Not like the region you're from, but like when my parents pronounce some English words, those English words sound like those sounds sometimes, and it's still distinguishable, as in I know what they're trying to say, largely because I'm used to the regionality of the English. So it's typically very difficult for me to like not stop and pause and think about things when it's not the same. It's like a double standard, but it's a expected double standard. When you try to generalize a language that has a lot of discipline and enrichment, right? Mandarin and Japanese, and then you use it, you compare it to a standard that, which is English, that it kind of falls apart in a sense, largely due to you're trying to be general, and yet English is predicated on exceptions, right? If you're trying to say things like it doesn't exist in English, that is a pitfall, in my opinion, for someone who is more of a learner, in my opinion, and probably less of a linguist. I'm not a linguist, so maybe a linguist will be able to chime in on that. Even I, though, with enough exposure to many English accents and whatnot, I can tell you that I have pronounced that specific sound in English before, like using an English word. So they do exist. Saying that they don't exist or doesn't have it in English may be two things. They didn't encounter it, which still doesn't mean it doesn't exist. When it comes to objective logic, most of the time, when something doesn't exist, it is one of the most difficult things to prove if that is true, because just because it doesn't exist under a specific condition, you don't know if it does. Right? It's not a confirmation of non-existence. Something you don't observe doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. It's a very pragmatic way to keep things in line. Like when you're talking to someone, it's like, oh yeah, nobody does this. It's like, well, nobody either yet or right now, nobody does this in your experience. That is correct, right? You have not seen anybody do this. Fair enough. I'll take your word at it. Even then, it's very difficult to speak to someone who goes to that level of generalization, because then you encounter problems like, oh yeah, weird people does this, and then meanwhile you're like, but you do this. Like, well, everyone except me. And it's like, well, I do this. Well, everyone except us. So that's what happens when you make a video, especially for YouTube and for your channel to advertise a product, and you make bold claims. Bold claims deal with generalization, but it really does sell a product, and I totally get it. Like, for example, this is the fastest way and most efficient way, and it is the one-stop shop resource for all your Japanese language learning means, you know, that kind of thing. I understand. And it's when taken from the perspective of an objective standpoint, when you place I think or I believe this is a conservative claim based on my anecdotal experience, then that would rectify a lot of professional criticism, right? However, that's a very colloquial English versus professional English. When you are professionally inclined, which kind of tells me that they're younger developers, and also that they became infatuated with another language, much like a lot of Japanese language learners, at a younger age, in which their primary language, often English, is serviceable, as in it is covering 99.9% of colloquialism, as opposed to someone who has a professional background that would delineate between these. I actually spent most of the time yesterday teasing about how so many online journalisms have thrown out professional writing. Like, it's to the point where I totally understand how it feels like it's normal to not care about these things anymore, largely due to the nature that you don't see them anymore. So if you don't see them, you don't think they're important anymore. You can't conceive anymore that they are important or useful, largely because they don't exist. For example, my personal is writing kanji and writing Hanzi. And the conception is writing can only serve a very specific purpose because no other purpose has exist for it anymore, right? That's kind of the thing. And for me, when I do something voluntarily, the richness of doing something that people don't care about anymore or no normalize is a sense of novelty. It can even be something that disappeared and then you brought it back, largely due to your own self-enrichment, and not for like pragmatic standpoints, like, some people can still call it useless skill, right? In fact, that's what this person implied in their video, that writing is largely useless. I place the word largely in there, or for the practical sense of what they're selling, to qualify it so that it sounds less, for lack of a better word, less unprofessional. It is very unprofessional, in my opinion, and very misleading when you use a word useless without qualifying what the purpose is. You have to qualify all your objectives. It is technically acceptably useless if it does not apply and affect any of the metrics you use. It's agreeable in that way. When you say it's useless and you nebulously talk about various things that lead to various things, it does not qualify whether it's useless or not. And then you're going to have tons and tons of technical and or bias or opinion counter arguments like, well, it's not useless. I love writing. Done. Your argument falls apart because you haven't qualified what if someone liked it, right? If your feelings are one of the qualifications, metrics you're not measuring, then it would remove that counter argument that's like, I like writing, it helps me remember things. Well, it's not clearly not useless. It invalidates your argument. Kind of a thought. It's a really big one. I'll talk about it later. We got to finish our lesson, our 3 lessons. I really love talking about these things because genuinely genuinely, the things I'm talking about, I feel that the internet can be, the people on the internet who consumes all this information can totally pick up this aspect of English. And I can't speak for other languages. However, the internet language, right? English, quote unquote English, understanding these nuances and these thoughts can help intuit and normalize critical thinking when it comes to expressing things. Oftentimes, yeah, it could sound very technical or politically correct. I understand that. It's emotionally distressful, largely due to how exact it needs to be. It's almost anti-English, right? We already talked about how loose English is to accommodate a lot of people. But I actually think that English can be leveraged in a way to normalize a more clear conciseness outside of pronunciation and like how you sound and whatnot, like writing. I'm specifically talking about writing, and we're talking about kanji characters and radicals and whatnot. So it's interesting to see if my understanding of Japanese will help me get a better understanding of the technicalities and how Japanese represents things and meaning and clarification in writing. Because in English, it is possible, I think, to slowly elevate the boundary, but not so much that it becomes a barrier, because obviously it's been tanking in order to accommodate larger, like other native speakers, right? So English has largely been suppressed to a point where I think nowadays it may lead to deductive reasoning issues, or not issues, but under practice, right? You have an article, someone says, young people always do this one life hack to stay happy. What the heck is a young person? What the heck is a young person? What the heck constitutes as a life hack? And how do you measure happiness? And you might be thinking, well, you can't measure any of those things. However, in English, one requires an explicit descriptor to minimize misinformation, right? To be more informative. English has gone to be compressed largely in a manner that when someone says something, at least to me, my ears hear, I just walked away with 60 more questions than I got answers, right? Even to a person who's trying to sell me something. Like I know even less, or I have been stimulated to have even more concerns than before I met the person. And that is a consequence, it's one of those things you got to look out for. It's like the whole knowing multiple languages will soon be useless because of AI and technology. Exactly. Speech, which I hear sometimes, needless to say, I personally disagree. I personally disagree too. Someone actually said this to me, Gecko. Two people. One person was presented as an open-ended question, and the other person stated it at me. So someone says, quit wasting your time. We don't need to learn languages anymore because of AI and technology, because language would be obsolete by then. Another person said, what are your thoughts about this? And my thought was, tell me when music dies and tell me when art dies. Even in the midst of the most hyper-functioning thing. Tell me when human creativity dies. And then we become robots. Then we'll truly understand what it means to be needless or useless. Tell me when people stop making stupid mistakes. Like, what I mean is, if being perfect is in vogue and it becomes the new standard of mediocrity, then individual humanity will find some way to differ, right? Humanity is a dynamic process. You are simultaneously encouraged to be consistent and also inconsistent due to human nature, right? If you're completely consistent, everything becomes normal and drab, which ultimately, in order to seek a more balanced lifestyle, you ebb and flow between discovery, consistency, discovery, consistency. You could try to live your entire life exactly the same way, perfectly prescribed for the rest of your life. Certainly there's got to be some, maybe some rare breed out there that would go from the beginning of life to the end of life. Even biologically, you can't even have that. You can try really, really hard to biologically stay static, certainly, but much like speech and everything else in terms of human expression, it ebbs and flows. Like, saying something like that, in my opinion, has very low ability to appreciate the human condition, and I would really prefer or highly encourage individuals like that to hopefully discover how happy they are, or the stuff that makes them human. Because honestly, yeah, I could kind of see someone who wants that to be a reality, and yet to drown out humanity is like, sure, sounds boring to you, but to each their own, I suppose. It's funny because if that other person says to each their own, they're expressing a human thing, a very human thing about something that is non-human. Like the very aspect of saying to each their own suggests that there's humanity in the person, if you know what I mean, right? Because if AI and technology and the singularity is a thing for intellectual creativity and consciousness, you wouldn't have to differ anymore. We could become the Borg from Star Trek. We become a hive mind. Hear me out. If it does happen, I'm okay with that. I don't mind joining the hive mind with all the capacities of human creation, I suppose. Whatever it becomes, I think humanity is beautiful, right? Hyper objectivity is getting a pushback from humanity's subjectivity at this point. I think it's coming to a breaking point. And AI and technology has really brought that to the breaking point. When you now have to answer the question, humanity preservation versus hyper-objectivity, right? And I kind of feel anxious, but also absolutely intrigued with cautious optimism of the consequences of this type of challenge, because humanity might realize, might end up celebrating. Like, people will in my opinion, will be humans, and they will end up championing and showing what's taken for granted. Human complexity is a beautiful thing, and squelching that with technology, it's a moderation situation. We have tasks that we want to automate, and we have tasks that we don't. And one of them is probably language and forms of expression. Forms of expression is so difficult to modernize or standardize, largely due to the inherent human condition. Unless, you do a Borg thing and assimilate everything. That's always a other thing. I don't think that that's purely an English issue. It's probably more a modern society issue. At least I'm certain English is not the only language that faces what you're describing. I don't think so either, Gecko. But due to my inexperience, right? Due to my inexperience, I speak for English. Largely due to my comfortable conservative nature, that I have sufficient, at least I conservatively have sufficient experience with English and a higher level of education that requires this specific English, right? In terms of the other languages, I cannot speak upon them, but only conjecture that if human condition stays true, and language is a form of extension and expression of that, then I would say from a, I don't know, an evolutionary anthropological perspective, hand wavy words, it's probably true for other languages. However, I myself do lack the experience and comprehension of that. And I would look forward to seeing how Japanese and Chinese differ as well in terms of how they negotiate the dissemination of their information through the use of their language. In English is absolutely one that requires a level of education that I feel can be achievable with exposure. So having more maturity, as in like the content creators of today or the influencers of today or the journalism, will end up being elevated at some point due to, because the internet is still very relatively young. When we're talking about professional writing, we're talking about professional writing that dates back 300 years, right? At least. And I'm talking about American English here. Not 300, sorry, like 200 and, to give or take, like 230 years. Like since then, that's the development of professional writing. So the writing that you see when you pull up a scientific article, right? When science starts to be recorded we're talking about in the concept of the modern contemporary American language. And even then, it's hard to argue because that might be also Middle English, arbitrary categorizations, right? So that type of thing would be interesting. I'm not sure if I'll ever reach that, and it's not a big deal to me. If I do, that's pretty cool, right? Have I watched Arcane? I have. It's somewhat on topic. Okay, I have watched Arcane. Let's see what Valentine cooked up for me today. Konban, Valentine-san. 友達は大阪に住んでいます。Oh, I didn't know you had. Oh, wait, did we already talk that you had a friend in Japan? I'm not sure. Osaka something. Osaka Ben? Osaka Ben o. Oh, hanashimasu. Ah, is that how you do it? Osaka Ben. So, Kansai dialect. Kansai. That's the regional dialect name for Osaka. In the Osaka area. Let's see. Me-chan. Oh, yeah. Me-chan was the degree thing, right? The degree thing. So me-chan, Mezuga, me-chan. Oh, is that read with an onyomi? Or is that read as a kunyomi? So nan. It could be in nan. So it's difficult. It's really difficult kanji, I see. Kanjiya. And ana, and I can't read it. Yomi Yomien. Interesting. Kakkoin desu yo ne. It is. Hanzu hero ne. Bikkuri shita. You were surprised? Oh, really? I didn't think you would be too surprised because it might have been brought up a couple of times. Anata wa Jungwen. I'm just kidding. How to say it? Chugoku go o benkyou shimasu. Something about forget. I forgot what forget is. It's wasuru, right? No. something like that. Wasuremashita. That sounds right. Wasuremashita W. そして、oh, wait. What is that one? Ganba. Oh, sorry. I don't know why I keep saying ka. Ganbatte kudasai. Okay. So so you have a friend who uses who's either speaking the Kansai accent or even or Kansai dialect or even using some Kansai specific dialogue. You remember Valentine, right? You've heard a bunch of Kansai dialect. In Like a Dragon, Valentine. Oh wait, do they make note of the characters being from Kansai? You at least know Majima and Saijima. They both speak with Kansai accents from time to time. Actually, Majima kind of does like a mix sometimes. He lets occasionally there are certain scenes, not like, I'm not sure about Like a Dragon 7, but in previous installments, from time to time he would let he would go back and forth between Kansai and Kanto, and it's like a thing. It's like a really big thing. So that's how I got exposed to listening to a Kansai accent or dialect. I don't remember what they translated to in Like a Dragon games, where they refer to it as a dialect or an accent. I think it's they use dialect, the word dialect. Interesting. Yeah. It's a different take on this. So I'll explain it a little bit later, but yes. Where were we? Oh yeah, all this spawned from unit. It's yeah, Takuman's. What were you gonna say about Arcane, Gecko? About Arcane. I really like our Riot Games setting for Arcane and how they use fantasy to address a lot of that stuff. You really like it? Exciting stuff. Yeah, I like the Kansai accent. Now, hear me out here. Kansai accent is like when I hear if Blair suddenly V sees me and calls me and she talks with the Texan accent. That's what the Kansai accent is like to me. And it's pretty much because it's established by meaning and sentiment due to Like a Dragon games. Historically, it's very similar. In reality, is very similar. The relationship, like the feelings and the sentiments and the parallelisms is very similar. Where the American English that I speak, it would be fairly akin to the Kanto type of situation, and then the Kansai would be something in the South, in the United States, and I think that's very neat, and I actually think fondly of both. Although sometimes standardization makes one a little bit more boring but comforting, and then the other one more exotic, exciting, but also potentially weirder, right? So that's kind of your human emotions bags of stuff. Honestly, it would be pretty fun to talk to someone. I don't have any personal friends who have Southern accents in the United States, so I can't really just ask them to bring them on, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this is my friend, they're from the South and this is what that sounds like. Have like a podcast between a person from the South and myself, and then in the meantime we ask people like, which accent do you like more, or which accent, like, characterize the accent between the two people. And I have a distinct feeling, at least from a foreigner perspective, that Blair would win by a milestone. If Blair spoke with a Southern accent, there's a great heavy chance that Blair will win from a foreigner perspective. Like if we were both talking, largely due to how exotic or like how iconic it is. Meanwhile, like the North, it's Tokyo accent. It's Kanto dialect. You love Arcane, although season 2 felt just a little too fast paced for you. Still satisfying though, and such an yes. By the way, Gecko, do you know the background behind Arcane's animation studio? That's a French animation studio, and it's very. I'm gonna tell you now. This is a generalization for animation and stuff because I quite like animation music and stuff. It is a very generalized French aesthetic at the current moment, and that it bleeds into video games. There is a French game, like a French game and a French setting game coming up soon. In the indie scene, when you see the animations, the stylization and how they layered and do that type of thing, there are very noteworthy things that identify it as a French animated studio. I think their name was Fortis. I don't know how, it's a French word. I call it Fortis, but or something like that. Wait, let me get their name first. Yeah, like maybe it's Fortiche, Forti, or like I don't know how to pronounce French words. Yeah. You don't want to spoil anything for him, but the idea of evolving beyond what we were thinking about earlier is definitely a strong theme in season 2. Yes. I'm a Star Trek fan. So, when it comes to sci-fi and all the all the infinite or fathomable experiences and questions regarding humanity and its context within the universe and human condition and stuff, over thousands of hours of Star Trek will kind of end up having a analogy to Star Trek as much as possible. The Borg thing was a Star Trek thing. It's actually one of the earliest concepts about assimilation. The Borg versus different types of assimilation. Like there's also empathetic races, like things, all those like thought experiments about what happens. And also, by the way, in Star Trek, the default is a universal translator. And unlike like Arcane and the vast majority of science fiction writing that is supposed to be provocative and very entertaining, Star Trek's setting is that humans achieve utopia. So now humans are expected to come from the perspective of being one of the most advanced. And they still encounter other advanced, like different types of advancements of race, but generally speaking, instead the role is that they are discoverers and they analyze and observe the consequences of different cultural structures, which is a play on different types of humanity, right? Like a projection of how civilization could change based on tweaking certain aspects. Like, for example, those who are completely telepathic. There's an entirely empathetic race, as in a race that communicates through empathy, like telepathic empathy. And then, you have the Vulcans, obviously, the ones that they do experience emotions, but they practice years and years of expression. Fortiche is kind of a familiar cutesy way to say fort, which means strong or otherwise skilled and good at. Ooh, that's kind of cute. You did watch the 5-part making, which is great. Yeah, I love their style. Their French animation in video games. Like when you get video games from French studios, you tend to get that very. There's something very bourgeois, or I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's like I love it because it's so painterly. Like it's an element that really sticks out compared to like I don't know, your Lovecraftian. your love, your. I'm trying to think of like some other very rigorous archetypical type of depictions and stylization and whatnot, right? You also have like comic books, manga, and whatnot. Even manhwa and mangu or manwu, yeah, manwu. They vary in a very noticeable way, right? Okay, we really gotta get on our lessons. more talk in a bit. So we have inches. Oh no, is it inchi? Oh no, it's inchi. Doru. Oh, doru. Setto. I like how they're avoiding introducing more kanji. or more like hirakana or something by using three. It's funny they've used three units that are English. Actually, maybe Ko decided to use these three. This is a big brain moment, to instill the idea that English has units. They have counters, right? English do have. It's funny because I'm not sure if this is a coincidence that they ended up choosing 3 katakana egos, but like, and then the common ones. These are common colloquial ego units, right? So the one thing that someone will say, oh, they're not the same because the English do not encounter phonetic changes, right? Not euphonic changes with the counter, and then the counter itself does not encounter euphonic changes. Well, it does. Inch and inches, dollar and dollars, but that's a whole different story, and we don't want to talk about that. All right? No. I don't want to hear it. Whoever, Blair, Valentine, Gecko, you're not allowed to talk about the grouping thing. Do not tell me about geese, deers, syllables and syllabi. No, we're not done with that. Oh, you gotta get to sleep? Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Hopefully, I'll find something to you'll enjoy or laugh about when I finish the Hansa Hero introduction. Yeah, じゃあね. Joe Mama. またね. Okay, context sentences. Ooh. Oh no. Gasoline. Oh my gosh. Gasoline. Wait. Sudan? Oh my gosh. Gasoline. Sudando まで。9 mile des. Oh my gosh. My brain is exploding. It's katakana ego. Okay. Q page を開いてください. Okay, that's fine. That's just pagey. Oh, I gotta get used to this. This typeset is a little less. So, この biru. Wait. Biru? Oh, biru. Oh, yeah, building. I'm so used to 建物. このビルにはQ floor instead of kai. Okay. 風呂はあります. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. All right. Because honestly, I probably say I probably more often now see like この建物には9階あります. right? Or kukai? No, kyukai. Kyukai arimasu. Or kukai. I actually don't know. Oh, we didn't go to 9th floor yet. Is it ku or q? It's q, probably, because it might get confused with something else. I'm thinking like something like kon, the character kon in Chinese. All right, that's 9. So we just need to know 9 because they're related. Yeah, looks like it. All right, and then we finally got Yama. The kanji is composed of one radical, yes. The mountain radical and the mountain kanji are the same. Huzzah. So what is our sun? Oh, Fuji-san. Fuji-san is easy. You know, right? Fuji-san. Yeah, they use the classical Fuji-san. Think about mountains talking to each other. Oh. Yeah, that's kind of cute. Everest-san talking to Fuji-san, calling each other by their names and adding the Japanese name ender san to each of their names. Hello, Everest-san. Oh, hi, Fuji-san. That's kind of cute, actually. Be sure to imagine this vividly. The most absurdly you can imagine it, the more likely you are able to remember the reading sun. The more elaborate, I'm more saying the more elaborate it is, right? It doesn't have to be absurd, but being lavish about it is also relatively safe way. But absurdity does go a long way. Like right now, if you drew Mount Everest like as a Cthulhu mountain, you know, if you turn here's my thing. If you turn the Yama upside down, it looks like Cthulhu's tentacles. I'm just saying. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Not that it's involved in anything. Cthulhu is gigantic, so Cthulhu could be as big as Mount Everest, you know, if they wanted to be. Interesting. They went with Kokonotsu. Kokonotsu first. Kokonotsu. The vocabulary is composed of one kanji, 9. That's the combination. Alright, yes. Right. Numerical. This word follows the number of things pattern where there's a kanji for a number plus tsu on the end. Whenever you see this, you know the word means some things. Blank things. Knowing that as long as you know the kanji, which you do, you can figure out what number of things it is. For this one, it's the kanji for Q plus tsu. So this is 9 things. Interesting. So the read would be kokonotsu, right?
Kokonotsu.
Right. Kokonotsu. Since all of the number of things, words, all follow the same pattern, number plus tsu, you really just have to remember the part before the tsu, and then remember that the tsu is in all of these. All of the readings are the kunyomi readings, which means we'll have to use a mnemonic to remember them. You know the onyomi reading of the kanji portion, ku and kyu. Wait. But that still works. So, oh, and then this is kunyo. Oh, I get it. Yeah, kokono is kunyomi reading. What thing do you have 9 of? The 9 things you have are coconuts. Coconuts. 9 coconuts, huh? Is there anything else that starts with kokono? Alright. What do you have 9 things of? These 9 coconuts, of course. These 9 coconuts. As you can guess from the spelling, coconuts are not coconuts. Think of them as fake coconuts. Imagine yourself juggling 9 coconuts in the air. Try counting them as you do, arriving at 9 things. Then arrange them in a square on the ground, 3 coconuts by 3 coconuts. Now you should remember how to read kokonotsu. Hey, it works. 9 coconuts, 3 by 3. It does help that the last game I played was Like a Dragon 8, like involving Japanese, and we can imagine ourselves collecting 9 coconuts and arranging them on the beach in Hawaii. All right. We have coconuts and coconuts no. Oh yeah, because it can be preceding and after. Yes. I mean, word combinations. Oh. Coconuts. Coconuts ne? Is this shita? Maybe. It might be a different read though. Coconuts shita and coconuts ue. Maybe. Coconuts kurai. Kurai. That's fine. Oh, or so. Ooh. That's something I haven't encountered yet actually. Use a name and or so, like interpret it that way. I would say something like it's around there, it's about there. But seeing it written like this, 9 or so, makes me think. Kono, oh no, kono area. Oh my gosh, area instead of like tokoro or like basho or something dokoro, something like that. Kono area ni kokonotsu no yama yama ga aru. Okay, fair enough. Donuts. Okay, donutsu. I'll take that though. Donutsu. Yeah, so all the words that I have not encountered a Japanese version of them, it still reads really well. However, the words that have Japanese like equivalents or like something, they get lost by the wayside because Duo don't use them too often interchangeably anymore. So things like aria, I've never heard. Like no, but it makes sense. But donatsu is donatsu. Donatsu o kokonotsu moratta. Morau. So past tense. Moratta. Let's see. 3人? No, wait. Yeah. So maybe like 3人しかいないのに Interesting. しかいないのに大きいね大きいベッド Oh yeah, ベッド is a common one too. ベッド7のつもolder. Wait, is that da or ba? Oh yeah, da. Older shite shimatta. Older. Older is a new one. I don't know how common that is. Accidentally. How does the accidentally work? Okay. Shimatta. Maybe the shite part? No, but that's the act of. I mean, well, it's a different type of learning, so we're no longer like concerned with that type of thing in the WaniKani sphere. We'll do that in other types of activities, so don't worry about that. All right, quiz time. San. Fuji-san. Wait. Vocabulary reading. Okay. Wait. Wait. I should have reviewed. What? Wait. I know it's Q, but what was the... Is it because they didn't write anything for... They didn't write any mnemonics? Yeah, it's probably because they didn't write any mnemonics. Right? Well, there wasn't a new story or there wasn't anything for Q. They just said Q is Q. That's probably the lack of something problem. Actually, let me see. Did they write anything? Oh no, they didn't write anything. Okay, that's probably. I was looking for a new mnemonic. We could create a new mnemonic for it though. Sometimes it's fun to create mnemonics to separate vocabulary. So the vocabulary gets one too. My potato soup came out really good. Very nice. Hooray! We did it! Oh, interesting. All right. Here we are. 2 vocabulary words in. All right, so we got close to 2 hours. Actually, now we have to write. Let's do some refreshers. So, more or less, now how do we arrange this? So, we could compress and just go like so like 1 2 3 3 I skip to 7 right 7 8 9 Oh, that's what's important about Q. It's not ku, right? They're not looking for ku. Their examples that they have are Q. That's the difference between the kanji entry and the vocabulary entry. Q and then kokono. But not ku. They did not give an example of ku yet. Which ku would be like maybe kuji or something. To distinguish between the entry for kanji. Ju. Jujo. And what do we have? We have enter someone. So let's say enter stage from the left is enter a person happens to be Joanne. 晚上好，早。So happens to be Joanne with a big person who's missing a toe. Or it could be from the car. Same toe. Happens to be a construction worker. Oh. And beautiful lips. Ko. Oh, I lost my I lost the there's a broken string. So let's say it was a lot of fun. The car, right? The car was found originally from the Kawa, drifting down from the Yama to which belongs to a construction worker / farmhand. Oh, who has wonderful lips. Ko. Is that it? Oh, that's it. I think. That's all we have. Let's see. Check, 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 check. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, I forgot about strength. Ko is strong. Dang it. Oops. No. So Riku and Roku. Roku. And so I keep forgetting Roku or Riku. Okay. And yes. Not too many. Not too many things. So that's another variation, right? Cole got that power. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, Ko got that power. Secretly, and secretly, Ko might be number 2. Oh, this could get dark. Like it could be a murder mystery. Like Ko could be number 2, and Joanne could be number 1. Oh no! Then we have a murder mystery on our hands because 2 shot 1. The way you write the lines, the bow radical, isn't it? The bow radical? The bow radical, isn't it? The bow. Which one's the bow? Oh, they're XD. The lines. Oh, these things? The way I write. The way you write the line. Which type of lines, Blair? You gotta help me out. These are arrows, if you're talking about these. The only icon that I can think of that you might be referring to are these. But other than that, I don't know. This one's a little aggressive, but it's a lot slighter. I don't, sometimes I lift towards the angle, or it's my next stroke. So that might be a... Anyways, yeah, murder mystery on our hands, and it's over fish. It's probably a murder mystery about fish and a car and cookies and cucumbers. It's over a dispute about fish and cookies and cucumbers, and maybe a very, very expensive cross filled with jewels. So there's a heist involved as well. Somebody write this novella. Yeah, right now you can probably connect all of these into a single series, right? Number 3, so let's fill this in, right? Ko, the construction worker, was disguised as Santa-san when they went to steal a jewel cross, right? So we check, and then Santa-san, while they were stealing, had something to do with cookies, right? Because Santa-san, you know. And then fish, she was murdered. Joanne was murdered when she went out to get fish, to buy fish, right? Specifically 8 fish to put in the hatch, right? 7. However, there might be a reason that Ko ended up unaliving Joanne because she cheated. And there we go. There we go. We've completed. So now we can erase all of this, and we've connected all the mnemonics together. For if I was faster at typing, I would just type as you talk. It wrote itself, I swear. Yeah, that's basically it, right? Now we have the full story connecting all the kanji. Oh, what does the arrows mean? It's a leap of logic. So arrows are, for me, arrows I use as my shorthand for a leap of logic. Which, the leap of logic deals with mnemonics, right? Mnemonics. Yeah, so here, WaniKani works with mnemonic creation, right? XT. So WaniKani does mnemonic creation. That's one of their things. But hear me out, right? Like I said about Duolingo, most of the time, the mnemonics is only as useful as if you are actively involved in the mnemonics. So at first, when someone provides a mnemonic, it's really interesting. If it's not interesting, you have to make it interesting, right? Otherwise, the mnemonic fails. However, if a mnemonic is interesting or not interesting, you can develop it into your own. So at the end of each session, I'm basically creating a different arrangement of things for fun, just for fun. Like, what I mean is, this is not what I'm going to recall tomorrow because I'm going to be practicing the mnemonics today. What I'm doing is I'm having fun constructing and relating things over and over again because it reinforces memories and it does other things so that I can mess around. It's kind of like creating a sentence, right? If you're expressing something, if you're creating a story and whatnot, all the components reinforce the mnemonics. You're using mnemonics in different orders and whatnot. I'm basically scrambling these things as we're going. And in the future, I don't have to cover everything. But right now, it's limited. So in order to keep myself from like jumping ahead or being anxious or something, I'm spending some time laying down the grounds of a routine that I'm going to go through to reinforce stuff. Don't mind me just rewatching the VOD to give you a short story. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, so that's basically what I'm doing right now. This is the routine that I think we're gonna do to carry forward. And this is creating mnemonics on top of mnemonics. And now I'm shorthanding everything. So at some point all these arrows become faster. And at some point I might not even use the mnemonics that they originally had. It won't necessarily be the same exact mnemonics when I move forward. And there's a chance that I end up dropping some of the mnemonics because it becomes very efficient. But the idea is this is fun and I'm engaged in it. So from day to day, my frequency of errors would go down substantially, largely because for my preferences, I like to do things same. What was that saying? Same. How did the hand work? Like same but different, right? I need to get the hand motion down. I forgot what the hand motion. Wait. Hold up. We're doing the same but different thing. I know like someone. Oh, they point to the ground. Okay. So the motion is same but different, right? We're doing same but different all the time. That is the idea. Like writing, like right now I'm writing kanji, but hear me out again. A lot of people would say writing kanji is a waste of time. We're going to be talking about this very, very soon because Hansa Hero, the one of the developers, have a very specific commentary that I want to address. Writing is possibly a waste of time because everyone types and stuff, but you see, when I'm writing kanji, I'm telling a story. So when I write the kanji, I'm rekindling mnemonics. So the time that you spend writing or thinking about a mnemonic, you could also couple it with writing. The time you think about a mnemonic, you can also couple it with visualizing a kanji or something. These are the ideas where you compress all the activities and you enrich the process. So meanwhile, a lot of people like to compartmentalize these. Like, oh, you have to do writing at a different time than you're doing speaking or whatnot. It could be holistically complementary to each other, as opposed to making a list of something that is less useful or more useful, making one useless and one more valuable. In my opinion, that stunts my creative process, right? So it is kind of ironic. We're going to switch gears now because we're going to introduce our next thing, which is Hansa Hero. So let's close this off. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have fun about it. So for now, WaniKani, I haven't decided if I want to do something before each WaniKani session. It takes me about a month to 2 months to decide if I want to do like some sort of summary thing. Like maybe I'll create a mnemonic on the spot in the beginning of a stream and at the end of a WaniKani stream, so that when people are watching this video or something in the future, they can just look at the beginning for a summary and like an impact summary, and then go to the end and it's like, oh yeah, this is some of the stuff that would be fun and entertaining. Because the stuff in the middle, for my sub, even for my past sub, it's my notes are in the beginning and at the end of every Duolingo session, right? Most of the time it's in the beginning and then only the end of every third day of Duolingo, unless I'm doing reviews for like a big write-up progress report, which we're doing right now. It's always beginning and end. And this was my this was my attempt to make something that's long format, but also in the future, I will find some way to automate the chapters. So beginning summary, end summary, that's it. And then WaniKani, this is, a development in the process. These are how you go about VOD changing and whatnot, at least in my opinion. So that's what I'm doing at the end of each WaniKani session. We're doing these, now they're no longer constructs in the same way that Duolingo's construct is, which Duolingo's construct is based on prompts, right? They're based on sentence prompts. That's how I negotiate the arrows. That's what the arrows stand for. The relationship of the prompts, the short sentences that Duolingo have, that's how they're connected. They're connected. The arrows represent the mnemonic that co-wrote, the developer of WaniKani, the main primary writer of WaniKani. These arrows represent that connection. And it's that connection that you have to remember already. So now the idea is that I don't verbatim write these. I should know these already, these connections. And these connections now at the end represents my mnemonic with Ko's mnemonic. And the idea now is that these arrows gain more and more meaning that connects these. And they can be connected in different ways. Like, how do you make a sentence with, you don't necessarily have to make a sentence in this order. You don't have to talk about things in this order. Tomorrow we'll switch it up, because since I know these characters, right, and you need to practice fundamentals, learning them a different way is productive. Constantly reinforcing the same things you already know, waiting for new things. Yeah, you can skip ahead if you want. Although WaniKani's design, you can't skip ahead. So instead of trying to say, oh yeah, I already know this, let's just go as fast as possible, I'm using my time to enjoy what Ko has created, right? What Ko has written. And it creates a value to my time. And it also gives me a little bit of nostalgia, because this is what it felt like. Actually, this isn't not even close to what it felt like the first day of Duolingo. First day of Duolingo is like, you just threw a lot of things at me and I'm figuring it out. That's awesome. And this is a different feeling. But I'm no longer a from zero Japanese language learner. So this is my take. And I already summarized this in day one of WaniKani. This is what the experience is for me, not from zero. In my opinion, if I was from zero, this experience would look a very lot different, because I wouldn't already be using this technique, or like my personal curated technique because of Duolingo. I'm bringing most of my strategies or stuff that helps me retain Duolingo stuff into WaniKani, right? That's my take on most things. If you're developing skills and you're learning methods, you don't start over from zero. You constantly start from the position you are at. If it's a different tool and the tool does it differently, it doesn't mean you can't do the things you've done before because the tool doesn't do it. You can totally do it wherever you are. That's the idea of being an experienced, competent learner, right? And I wanted to emphasize this quite a lot, largely due to the nature that when I see learners, I don't necessarily see active learners. I see passive learners. Passive learners as in, oh no, this tool doesn't do this. Now I gotta go look for another tool to do this. And in before, you have used so many tools that you no longer have any innate problem solving or critical thinking or transferable skills between tools anymore. So what does that mean? It means it leads to the normalization of thinking you're not creative anymore, because you don't have to create anything. Like, it's a chicken or the egg question a lot of times for people who don't, in my opinion, who believe they're not creative. One of the things is it's a chicken or the egg, because they have to believe they're not creative or normalize that they don't have to create anything to kind of accept or understand or kind of believe that to be true. And I want to dispel that. You little goobers and your brains are very creative. Unfortunately, it also starts with being creative, right? Like, one has to normalize once again to create. And as hard as this might sound, when you were a little kid, you had to create all the time. Like, you had to create associations and whatnot on the fly all the time, because there wasn't anything that you could say. You couldn't convince yourself you were anything yet until you start gathering enough data and making associations and stuff. And this kind of brings back some of that stuff, right? At least that's how I think about it. If you look at something, what is your propensity to look up the answer right away, right? If you make an error, what is your propensity to have something passively tell you what it is? It's great for time and efficiency when you need time and efficiency. There's also times to be able to prep yourself and make yourself be an active learner and active problem solver, because there are situations that it's probably going to be a little hard to believe given the state of the internet, but there are situations that no matter how much research you have, or no matter how many people share their anecdotes online, it will not necessarily prepare you for the rigors of specific events that happen in your life, right? Because the permutation of all your events in your life will be astronomically highly improbable that someone shares the exact same situation that you have. Or maybe it does. Technology has broken barriers before. Maybe one day there's a piece of technology that will normalize how to recover from experiencing one's own frustration or nihilism. Maybe. I don't. At the moment, though, at least in my lifetime, I don't think there will be an answer to like nihilism, boredom, existential crises, things that humans encounter quite a lot. And creating things of your own kind of addresses a lot of that. Like, for example, someone who tries to fix a birdhouse and they decided, you know what, today I'm just gonna wing it, and it turned out all right. And then you ask that person, how do you feel about your birdhouse? So they probably feel really great about it because they're proud of themselves for doing something unaided. Not that it's the most pragmatic or most efficient and most elegant way of doing it, but it was something that they did, and it's a different type of reward system. So hopefully that kind of gives an idea of, hey, I'm looking at Zhao's meaning question, what's the meaning of the arrow? I wanted a deeper level of what the arrow means. That's what the arrows mean to me on like a really, really higher layered abstraction way. The arrows are a piece of me in my memory of these characters that are assimilating and collecting Ko's work as well. So those arrows are soon to be a representation of my sentimentalism and my memory of my WaniKani experience and my Duolingo experience, and pretty much all the experiences of creative writing that I have up to this life, up to this current point in my life. It makes things so much valuable, at least in my opinion, sentimentally, right? And that is kind of the thing that the creative process may help other people as well. And you can't define that. It's very difficult to define that for another person. So try it out. I honestly do you believe in this process, the process of being interested in your everyday life and your everyday things? It might not be necessary if you're really happy already and you're very fulfilled and already active. For those who aren't, this is a low risk way of practicing ownership and control of your memory. So when like WaniKani, right? Eventually I have to think about a situation where WaniKani is not going to be there, right? So if I am doing what Ko is also doing for me, at some point I won't need WaniKani. However, I'll continue to use WaniKani because it helps build me up. But I don't need WaniKani. The difference between dependency and independence. When someone says, "Oh, that's okay, I'll just pull up Google Translate," it's like, yeah, that's pragmatic. It's very useful. Or you could try to do it and you kind of goof and it's a little bit. Does that mean more to you? For me, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And the idea is you have the option of both, not one or the other. So then when one fails to provide satisfaction, you have other options. And that's great. Even the rare kanji character has its uses. That's the analogy I'm going to go with right now. Like, you have lots of things, but one day, maybe you're just excited and you decided to use a different word, right? Being efficient and hyper pragmatic largely is antagonistic to that. So when you're asking yourself, are you memorable to other people? Well, you're largely memorable due to your slight eccentricities. We're not talking about being like an incredibly flamboyant person. There are idiosyncrasies for every rich human person, enough with age that they're identifiable, unless you choose not to be identifiable, which is a life choice. This, at the end of my stream, is going to be identifiable to me. If someone hears me how I laid out this story, I'm willing to bet you 80% odds against you that someone who's using WaniKani for 8 days did not do this in this exact order and in this exact explainer. And that is a hallmark of suggesting something that I can add to my own personal memory, right? It's very liberating. And I hope I'm able to encourage others to do so as well. Create something, you gain ownership of it. It's amazing. It's fun. Even if it's iterative. I get tired of other individuals like shortchanging how, oh, if it's mostly inspired by someone, then there's no part of the creator in that stuff. That's how human progress works, you know? That's how history propels forward. It is iterating and building, and by not all things are leaps and bounds on top of other things. And that's my segue to Hansa Hero, which we'll transition to now, right? Yes, this is a total setup for my transition to Hansa Hero. The segue of iterative design and creative process on top of existing standards that's been tested for a couple years, right? WaniKani has been around is going into its 14th year. And with that, I wanted to say thanks for hanging out, thanks for chilling for the WaniKani portion, for those who are only interested in WaniKani. And if you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu, right? So to WaniKani enthusiasts, mata ne, ja ne, I'll be back tomorrow. And then, Duolingo needs to somehow I'm working out the schedule. Time is kind of tight. So we're working around stuff for now. Before I go to Hansa Hero, I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break, right? Bathroom break, hydration, stretch a little bit, and then we're gonna do our introduction. And that involves a lot of talking. Sorry. That's kind of what I do. All right. So let me do just that. Thank you again.